All right, so should be live now. So hello and welcome to the RPG Academy podcast, Detention Live. I am Michael, and I'm here tonight with two bonus special guest co-hosts, Chris Burlew from the Redemption podcast, who joins me often. You're probably very familiar with him, and Mike Olson, who is famous in the world of TTRPG design, well known. Actually, I went back into the archives. Back in 2014, we had you on for an interview for the Atomic Robo role-playing game. I have said many times, even though I don't play a lot of Fate, I think reading the Fate Core book is one of the best things I ever did for being a game master. And this is still one of my all-time favorite RPG books. The way that you and your team were able to incorporate the art from the books to explain the concepts of the game are second to none in any book I've read before or since. So, Mike, thank you so very much for joining us tonight.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I actually got to play a game with you as well. I don't know if you remember that. This was several years ago at Gen Con.
Yeah.
You were doing games on demand. And it was one of those weird...
Sparks Nevada?
No, actually.
Or was that the other fake game?
Yeah, we did the... you had a name for it. Basically, we were like famous historical figures.
The Centurions of Science. It was an Atomic Robo game. It was just set in 1893.
Yep, that was the one. And it was a ton of fun. So I want to thank you for that as well.
Like it.
So we got Foxblade and New York Tater joining us already. Thank you both for hanging out with us. We're going to be doing pretty much a detention show. For people who've watched it before, it's going to be pretty much similar. The big difference is in the middle, where we normally do used books. We're actually going to talk a little bit about a project that Mike is currently working on. And if there are any audience questions for that, you can drop them in there, and we'll do our best to answer them as best we can. And then we'll still have our regular audience Q&A at the end. So let's get into the show. The first thing we like to do here is called Extracurricular, and this is where we just talk about what we've been up to, top of mind, things of interest. Mike, I'll start with you. What have you been up to, buddy?
I've been working on this book. Sorry, that's the main thing. We have two kids, one's in 5th grade, one's in 2nd, and they're distance learning because that's where our whole district is. And that's been a thing that certainly occupies a good chunk of my day. The 5th grader, he can pretty much look after himself, although he does screw around, but we can't catch him because I have to be with the 2nd grader all day. But that's been a thing to get used to. But I think we're in the groove on that. What else am I? Can I think of anything else? I've watched 2 episodes of Lower Decks.
Oh, okay. I have not watched any of that yet. How is it?
I like a lot of the people on it. I like Tawny Newsome and Eugene Cordero. There's like really good people on it. But I have no interest normally in like a Star Trek RPG. Like just the premise of normal Star Trek like just doesn't really do it for me. Kind of Picard pushed a little more in a direction of like, okay, I can see like having a ship and doing something, but like the Starfleet thing, I'm like, I don't really get it. But Lower Decks would be a great game.
Okay.
You're all the unimportant people on an unimportant ship. And what happens, like the first episode is called Second Contact. So after the Enterprise or something makes first contact, someone else has to come along and do the paperwork. And that's what, the Second Contact is. And that's like the boring, unglamorous job. But like that's, someone's got to do that.
Right.
So I've enjoyed it. Like I said, I've only seen 2, but I've made time for that. And my wife and I also just finished watching Mindhunter on Netflix.
Oh, I really like that show quite a lot. Yes.
Yeah. I hope it comes back.
It kind of freaked me out when I watched Hamilton because I had never seen it before until it was on Disney Plus. And I'm like, wait, I know. And then I had the thing where you're like, how do I know that person?
Yeah.
And then, you go to Google or IMDb and I was like, holy crap, that's the guy from Mindhunter. Yeah. That was a combining of 2 worlds I did not think were going to go together at all.
Yeah. My wife was a fan of Jonathan Groff's from Frozen because our 2nd grader loves Frozen like a ton and loves Frozen 2, maybe more than Frozen, which is baffling, but he does. So like we watched the Making of Frozen, series on Disney Plus, and so from that she's just like, I like that Jonathan Groff guy, and then she wanted to see Mindhunter off of that. So Mindhunter was really good, but like I really hope they come back for another season because they did not leave it in a place where you could leave it.
Yeah.
They are. That's a popular one.
Hopefully.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's my understanding David Fincher let everyone go from their contracts because he had other stuff to do and he didn't want to stick them with a contract. So it's not canceled, but we don't know if their contracts are going to get renewed. But I hope so because it's real good.
I agree.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing. Chris, what about you? What you been up to?
Big thing for me is this weekend's our first Boy Scout camp out of the year,
Mm-hmm.
and getting ready for all the new rules and all the temperature checks we have to do before we leave, the masks we have to make sure everybody has, the extra gloves we have to have, making sure everybody has their own tent, because you can't share a tent right now, making sure that, a bunch of 12 to 18-year-olds understand the concept of 6 feet away.
Good luck with
And
that, sir.
yeah, a lot of planning activities that allow us to do stuff. So we're going to do a 5-mile hike, followed by some identifying different plants, and then another group of kids is going to go do another 5-mile hike, because they have to do 10 miles this weekend and then 15 miles the following weekend for one of the merit badges. So this old guy only has to do 5 miles this weekend.
Nice.
Other than that, just doing the normal work, coming home, waiting for the gyms and stuff to open back up so I can get back to losing weight, try to keep up with you.
Yeah, good luck with that, sir. I had to have life-changing surgery. You just had to put in effort. There's a little bit of difference there.
Yeah.
You should have those scouts play more D&D so they get used to thinking of the world in 5-foot squares, and it'd be a lot easier.
They'll do
I guess
that,
maybe Hero, because those are actually 2-meter X's. That's closer.
They'll play their version of what they call Greg style D&D Saturday night, which is D&D without dice. They just describe what they want to do, and the person running it kind of decides if it works or not.
Yeah, it worked for Amber.
Yeah, I don't really get involved with that because they're kids, and the games usually involve random weirdness. And I go, okay,
yeah,
my old brain can't handle not having a linear story. I can't keep jumping all over the place.
Yeah.
Cloud Atlas was not your book of choice.
No.
Yeah. So as for myself, I'm somewhat similar to Mike. I have 2 kids, a 5th grader and a 4th grader. We're also doing virtual schooling as well. And both are doing probably better than I should have any right to expect, though we still have issues. And it doesn't help that we have terrible internet. My wife works from home. So basically all day I have 3 people on the internet, and I'm just trying to figure out, can I watch Netflix right now? Which sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. As far as TV, I'm into The Boys. I'm very, very excited, which I loved Umbrella Academy. I burned through that. I loved it. But I was also super excited about The Boys, which just came out for the 2nd season. The 4th episode dropped last Friday. And I didn't read the comics. So I know that it is a comic, but I'm not really familiar with the story. So for me, everything's new. And I love it. I can't wait for the next episode. I'm just burning through that.
Those are 2 shows that I have not gotten to at all. I feel bad because I want to get to them. I
think both are definitely worth your time. I get time isn't maybe something you have to spend, but if you do, Umbrella Academy was kind of harder to get into. Like I watched the first couple episodes and it was okay, and then I kind of went away from it. Then I came back and then watched them all, and I don't know, maybe it was just maybe the familiarity of seeing the first episode again, even though I had already watched it once. Something grounded me in the world differently, and I really, really liked it. I thought the 2nd season was even better than the first in a lot of ways, so I absolutely loved it. The Boys is a hard watch. It's because it's so bleak.
Yeah.
If you're not into that, it can be very difficult because it's not a pretty picture of the superhero world. It's probably more realistic, but again, we don't watch superhero shows for reality. We just escapism, and this is very much if this was real, this is probably how it would be, and it would kind of suck.
Right.
But it's definitely enjoyable.
Have you read The Authority? Because that's also like, look, if people could do the things superheroes could do, they would just take over.
I have not actually, but I can put that on my list of things to check out. New York Tater jumped in the chat. He is back home after 5.5 months living in a hotel and now working from home. I don't know his exact job. I know he works in the government with like hurricane, like I guess FEMA or something along those. So if there's a lot of hurricanes going on, he's a very busy man who never gets to stay home. So thank you very much for what you do, New York Tater. I appreciate it. And then the last thing I would mention is I kind of got roped into helping out with a local sci-fi convention. I'd never heard of this before. It's called FILK, F-I-L-K. It's sci-fi music.
Right. Well, it's any like fan music.
Okay.
It's a music version of fan fiction, I guess. Like it's writing songs about things you're a fan of.
So never heard of this before. A friend of a friend of a friend basically is like, hey, you're into role-playing games, and they're looking, because they're doing virtual this year, to try to offer some gaming programs aimed at kids. I almost never run for kids. I have a few times, but I'm a little bit like I've run for my kids, but it's different because I can yell at them.
Right, right.
So I'm a little bit hesitant, but I've kind of got roped in. So I'm going to be running a game for some kids. I'm going to be running a panel on how to start role playing games for younger people who want to start running games. And I've tried to pull in a couple other people to help me as well. I'm like, I'm not really good with the kid part. If you can help me with that, I can do the other stuff.
Yeah.
But it's still kind of cool. Part of our mission here at the Academy has always been to help new people get started. And, what better than starting kids, I guess. But I am still terrified that I'm like dropping an F-bomb or some kid's going to be like going crazy. And we'll have to mute them off of the game and then they're going to complain. So,
yeah, I was going to say, I really enjoy running for kids. I like running for new people and kids. And if there are new kids, that's like the best because I remember, I started playing D&D when I was 8. And I don't remember who ran that game, but like someone ran that game and I got to play in it. And then it started this. So it's really cool to me to get to be someone's first DM. And if they're a kid and this can be like a lifelong thing, that was me who did that.
yeah.
I think it's really cool. I wrote these Adventures League adventures for San Diego Comic-Con a couple years ago. And friends of mine also in quarantine, when I put them up for sale, friends of mine said, "Is that something we can get and play?" And I was like, "No, I'll run them for you. you and your 10-year-old son." So I ran D&D for them for like 12 weeks because they could only do an hour at a time. They have another kid. They couldn't just like leave her for 4 hours.
Yeah.
So it took forever to get through these 3 adventures, but it was a lot of fun. And then immediately thereafter, they got the starter set, and now that kid is DMing for his parents.
Nice. That's like exactly what we want to have happen. Yeah. My fear is that it will go the other way, and I will like destroy some kid's idea of what fantasy role playing is, and they will never play again, and it'll be my fault or something.
I think, I think the normal things that I keep in mind when I run a game, like be a fan of the player characters, and make sure they know you're not there to kill them. The monsters are, but you're not, and like it's a collaborative thing that we're doing. All that stuff. I think that all goes a long way with kids, especially if you take time to really spotlight like the cool thing they did and describe it, work with them to describe it in a really cool way. So they're always feeling good about their character and feeling like they're doing something exciting all the time. I think that's really important. It's easy when you have 2 adults and 1 kid because you can just throw everything at the 1 kid. So when you have a table of kids, like I run D&D at San Diego Comic-Con all the time. Not this year. But we get a lot of new people and a lot of kids. I've had like a 7-person all kids table before, and you just have to like find out what's exciting to each of those kids, during play, and then do that thing with them, and just try to move the spotlight around. I don't know.
Well, I still appreciate the advice. I do a lot of that when I run because I focus a lot on running games for people who are new, but they're adults who are new. Yeah. So the kid thing's the part that worries me a little bit. So New York Tater did respond. He does work for FEMA response operations covering New Jersey, New York, Puerto Rico, and U.S. Virgin Islands. And Tad B's also here. He says present. So he probably will jump off because he always does that.
They're not anywhere near each other. Whatever.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's quite a territory.
All right. Yeah. So we'll move into our first improv game. This one is called 10 Things. The idea here is that we will prompt one another to come up with a list of 10 things that fit the prompt. Immediacy is more important than accuracy, but we'll see how things go. Mike, you're the extra bonus special co-host, so would you like to go first, second, or third?
Is it going to be the same topic for all of us?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll go first.
Okay. So Chris, you're the other co-host. Do you want to give Mike his prompt, or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay. Alrighty. I try to use it, tie it back to things that we've talked about if I can. Okay, well, it's simple. You mentioned The Authority as a comic, so I'll just say give me 10 comics that I should read.
Okay. Well, Atomic Robo, that's an easy one.
One.
Ms. Marvel, the Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel is real good. Young Avengers
2,
and Secret Avengers
3, 4
by Bendis. This was back during this was years ago, but reading both of those I thought they were really cool. They were really great comics. And the whole Secret Invasion arc that was happening then in Marvel was really entertaining. What else do I like? Well, I got a bunch of old Savage Sword of Conan comics downstairs.
Fine.
And can't go wrong with that. Superman, All-Star Superman also is super good. What else? There's got to be something else I'm forgetting, and people are like, how could you not say, or I'll be saying to myself, how could you not say later?
don't have to
Oh,
be
you know what?
real.
I would be. It's a little tiny bit self-serving, but that D&D versus Rick and Morty was really good.
7? Okay.
Or Rick and Morty versus D&D. Like it was really great. I'm a sucker for Star Wars and also theme parks. So the Galaxy's Edge comic series that Marvel put out was really cool because
Okay.
I like more about Galaxy's Edge, and there's a bunch of stories set there. I thought that was neat.
8.
What else do I pick up on a normal basis? What am I normally getting? I don't. What I used to get. Oh, there's one I can't think of the name. This was years ago. Most of my big comic reading was years ago, but
They don't have to be real.
I know, but I can't. Well, it was about a kid whose father was basically like had written these Harry Potter like stories, and the main character was named after his son. And so the son has been living with this like nonsense famous dad, all this attention on him about these stories, and he hates it. But then he finds out it's true, and there were stories about him, and then like his whole life turns upside down. And it was a really clever comic. I can't remember who wrote it. It was so good though. Someone figure that out for me, please. I'll find out later.
All right, 9. The unnamed Harry Potter-esque story.
Yeah, I don't know what I meant. I am not recommending J.K. Rowling. Just want to make it clear. Just this comic was real good. And then years ago, I don't know if you could track this down, but just the form factor alone was really entertaining. DC put out a series of comics, Wednesday comics, that were in newspaper form. So like every comic was like a page of one character and another page was some other comic. And it was all like broadsheet form, and it was really cool. I don't know if you can find them now, but it was neat. Plus, it was like if you ever just want to read a bunch of stories about DC, I bet they're online. If you want to read a single volume that had like Superman and Commandy in it, it was great for that.
All right, 10. Yay!
Did it.
All right, so Mike, you will get to give Chris his prompt for his 10-thing list.
Ugh. I don't want to have to think of a thing. I already did comics, so I can't do that with you.
Oh, you can.
Well, I don't want to. We said it wouldn't be the same topic.
That's true. That's true.
What did we talk about? We talked about Cub Scout stuff. Talked about streaming shows a little. Can you come up with 10 streaming shows on any platform that are like things you would really recommend?
Wow, the guy who doesn't watch a lot of streaming stuff. Okay.
Well, then I take it back.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
All right. Chris and Michael talk.
1.
Baking with Chris.
2.
All right.
Chris's wife bakes better than Chris.
3. And true.
Good one.
Chris is learning to clean.
4.
Chris wishes he could do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but is sitting in his living room staring at the world.
It's a deep character study. 5.
Yeah, that one's a thinker. Yeah, it's a little slow, that one.
Meeting new people at conventions.
6.
That'd actually be a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
Middle-aged morons.
7. It's like Beavis and Butthead, but
yeah. Let's see. Chris buys a new computer.
8.
Because I need to do that. Let's see. What's my kid like to watch? Chris learns Minecraft.
9.
That could take a while. And
My kid would watch that.
Chris's kid teaches him Minecraft while rolling his eyes.
Yay! 10 things. Congratulations. Woo. Alrighty, sir. And finally, you can get to give me my prompt.
All right. I think I'll stick kind of with the comic book theme in a way. And since we like Legendary, can you give me 10 names of new powered people that you'd like to create?
Oh my god, dude! Seriously? Damn it! I know they don't have to be real, but even then, I'm still like,
I thought this would be easier for you.
No, this is very, very difficult. So Robotanist, who's a robot botanist. Commander Murica. I don't really like the way that's leaning because that's not how I lean, but it's still funny. Super person.
3.
Silvered Supple Sable? No, that sounds awful. Spider Pig. Simpsons already did
5.
it, but it's still funny. Kitty Vengeance.
Kitty Bang Bang. Oh.
Yep.
6.
Yeah. Coolverine.
7.
Dead Puddle.
8.
Going through all the comics. I don't read that much anymore. The Girls. I love The Boys. I probably love that too.
9.
And Captain Starshine.
10.
Yay! Excellent. Well, thank you all for playing these silly reindeer games. So now we're going to move into, again, used books. It's often sort of the meat and potatoes of the show, but we're going to do a special version tonight in honor of Mike joining us. Mike has a project that you're currently working on. It's on Kickstarter as we speak. We didn't have enough time to get what we would traditionally do, like a show and tell for it. So we want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about this and maybe tell people why they should go check it out and what they will find if they do. So Mike, take it away, please.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity. First, though, I got to know, what is used books normally? Like, what are we depriving the people of?
So normally what it is one of us talks about a campaign that we've played in the past that either went terribly bad and we've learned lessons from, or went really well and we learned lessons from. So it's either like a do different or do more of sort of situation in a previous campaign that we played or ran.
Oh, that's valuable. So we're not doing that, though.
But you can come back in 2 weeks for that.
Yeah, okay, great. All right, so I'm working on a book with Jim Zub. Jim Zub wrote the Rick and Morty versus D&D that I mentioned earlier. He's written a lot of the Baldur's Gate comic series. He's writing the Avengers right now. He's written Conan. So he's a big comic type. He also worked with Watsy on Descent into Avernus. I saw him at D&D Live play Minsk from Baldur's Gate, and he'd shaved his head, and he had the purple tattoo over his eye. And Matt Mercer played Boo, and Matt Mercer just squeaked the whole time, and that was pretty good. Anyway, so he wrote this comic 10 years ago called Skullkickers. That's like it's very D&D. It's informed by D&D for sure. It could easily just be a D&D game, but it's about these two guys, Rex and Rolf. One's a big burly human, the other's a dwarf, and they're just mercenaries with like virtually no ethics, and they get screwed over a lot, and they try to do things for money, and things just blow up in their face all the time. It started as a short that he and an artist had done called 2 Coppers, because the joke was they'll kill anyone for 2 coppers. And then they had fun doing that. So then Jim did more of Skullkickers. So he did 6 volumes and 36 issues of this comic, and it's a beloved comic now. So he wanted to do something special for the 10th anniversary of Skullkickers. So he's written a new 36-page or 30-page Skullkickers comic. He's combining that in a hardcover with like a 60, 70-page D&D adventure.
Okay.
For 5th edition. So the comic is about this Wizards Academy, this tower, and then the adventure is that tower and the dungeon under it. So it's like an adventure location that's touched upon, described in the comic, but we go into a lot more detail, obviously, in the adventure. And it's been really cool to work on. It's like I said, you said the Kickstarter is going on now. It's already funded. We're in the phase where we're trying to hit stretch goals. I think the next stretch goal might be more RPG content. So I would love to hit that stretch goal, because I'm the lead writer of this, and I'm the one who has to decide what we cut.
Okay.
And I don't want to cut anything.
Yeah.
So, so if we can hit stretch goals where I don't have to cut anything, that would be great, because we have too much good stuff already.
Now, you said it's going on right now. Do you know how much time has left? How many days before it ends?
I think it has, I want to say like 17 days.
Okay.
18 days. You can. So when you see this or whatever, you can look it up. Skullkickers, Caster Bastards, and the Great Grotesque. That's the name of the book, and it's going to look great. He's gotten great cover art for it, and it's going to have the trade dress of an actual 5th edition D&D book, which may be confusing, but it'll look real good. It may get some sales that way.
Nice.
So yeah, it's really cool. I'm really honored to be a part of it. You've talked about Atomic Robo before, and that's how I got to be on it. Actually, he put out a call for people to work with, and so I responded to that call and mentioned that I'd written the Atomic Robo RPG. Then he went right to Brian Clevenger, was like, "How was this guy?" Brian said, "Great." He went, okay, good. And then
You're like,
called me back and immediately brought me on. Yeah, it was exciting.
all right.
Because he's a big name, and it's cool to get to work with. And he's also a super nice guy. Like he's just been really good with everything. He's very busy working on comic stuff. So it's me and two other writers, Eleanor Jordan and Clint Kronk. And Eleanor Jordan's done a ton of stuff on DM's Guild. If you look up ERF Jordan, she has just put out like so much content. It's ridiculous. And she's 20 years old or something, but she's just churned out so much material. So it's great to work with her because I know like she can just crank out anything.
Right.
She's just written so much stuff. Clint is actually the brother of Jim's first DM. I want to say it. If that's not accurate, then correct me, Clint. But I think that was the case. And Clint's a cartographer, and he's working on other projects himself. He's working on something with Ed Greenwood.
Okay.
So he comes from a good pedigree as well. And it's been a lot of fun so far working with both of them, coming up with Skullkickers appropriate stuff for this Wizard's Tower, which is not a direct parody of Hogwarts. But if we sometimes veer into parodying Hogwarts, we're like, well, you know, it's kind of unavoidable at this point in the culture.
Right. If you didn't do it, people would
it'd
ask.
be weird, right?
Yeah. So somebody asked for the Kickstarter name again. I will say that once it gets to this is audio only and on YouTube, I'll actually put a link in there for it.
Okay.
But if you don't mind, one more time.
Yeah, Skullkickers, Caster Bastards, and the Great Grotesque. But there's only one Skullkickers Kickstarter going, so if you just search Kickstarter Skullkickers, you can't miss it.
Yeah, excellent. And then I normally like to ask, like if this was a traditional show and tell, I always like to ask, what's the entry-level pledge if I want to, you know, if I want to get the D&D stuff, because that's what I'm probably most interested in, what's it going to cost me?
I got to say, now I don't know anything about running Kickstarters. I think these price points on these reward tiers are a crazy good deal.
Okay.
They seem very low to me. So if you just want the PDF of this, which is going to come with a bunch of extra stuff, including maps and, you know, like lots of digital assets, that is $14 Canadian, because Jim's in Canada, which is like $10 US.
Okay.
$10 US, you get the thing. You get all the thing and the electronic versions of the other things
that is very
we'll
cheap.
produce.
That is very cheap.
It's crazy. Yep. If you want the printed book, that ends up being like $40 US, which still is really good.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like lower middle, I would say.
Yeah,
for books.
Yeah. There is a limited edition tier that comes with this great map drawn by Mike Schley. Mike Schley drew this map for Jim years ago to put in a trade paperback for some other book, and then I found it online. I was like, "Are we putting this in the Kickstarter? Because it's gorgeous, and it's a really cool map of the setting, which like the setting doesn't get explored a whole lot in the comics, so it's cool to have a map of the like. Here's what he thought of the setting. So that's in there too. At the limited edition level, you get this big map of the whole, you know, setting, the continent or whatever, and it's a funny map. On the reverse side are maps from the adventure that you might want to use. So it's two things. It's useful as well as pretty. And it comes with some other stuff too.
All right.
But I think like a more specialer book.
Exactly, probably like faux leather or actual leather. Probably some ribbon bookmarks, all the cool stuff.
Or like embossed gold leaf something.
Oh, nice.
There's I know there are higher levels. These are the levels that like I personally never pay attention to because I'm not going to pay $1,000 to have my name in a comic book. It's just like I just can't justify it. Kudos to super fans who can, and there always are. I saw that on all the Atomic Robo Kickstarters. Always has people who are like, yes, put me in the comic or whatever it is. So we have some tiers like that, I believe. But like I say, go to the Kickstarter and check it out. And I'm glad you asked about the price points because it seems like such a good deal to me.
Excellent. Chris, I think you were trying to jump in. Do you have any questions?
Do you get to play the two characters from the comics?
Yes, actually there are, I say two because it started with two, but very quickly he introduced a third. So yeah, Rex and Rolf are in there as well as Kuzia, who is this elf-like ranger assassin that is an enemy, then becomes an ally of theirs. So I've statted them up as sidekicks. If you want to play them as PCs, those sidekick stat blocks are pretty good. Like you can just play them as PCs, but it's not an adventure where you're necessarily supposed to play the characters from the comics. But if you want to play your own characters and also have them around, we think that's the cooler option.
Okay.
But like those sidekick stat blocks from that Essentials kit, right? So they're in that format, and there's guidelines for leveling them up to 10th level because this takes you from first level to probably like 9th level.
Okay.
So it's a good length of a campaign. We're using milestones, so it might go a little quicker than if you're using XP. But we're always very carefully thinking about like, okay, so they can gain a level here. What's the next thing? Because we want them to be like 9th level at the end. So we're always working out like what's a cool little like chapter, a little climax that this can result in a new level.
Right.
So you can play those characters from the comic.
All right. Nice. And I'll throw it out just to chat. We have a few people who are hanging out with us. We're still going to do like our general audience Q&A at the end like we always do. But if you have any specific questions for Mike about this Kickstarter, I'll give you a couple minutes because I know there's a little bit of a delay. If you'd like to try to get them in now, obviously we'll do what we can to answer all of them. But I did want to ask, and again, hopefully you know this, is this something that's kind of like already at the phase where it's almost done? Like when's it going to actually be delivered once the Kickstarter closes? Is it a couple months? Is it next year? What do we think we'll actually have it in our hands?
I think the delivery date is down as June.
Okay.
Of 2021. I think it's smart to plan for a little extra time in these unprecedented times for a Kickstarter because like publishing is more difficult now, and so is the Postal Service for the time being. So I think that's all been taken into account. The guy running the Kickstarter, George Rohack, has run all of the Atomic Robo Kickstarters. And they do Kickstarters, periodically to do like nice hardcover compilations of that comic. So I know that he knows what he's doing. So if he set those price points there and he set that delivery date there, I'm like, well, that works then.
It's always nice when you have someone who's got experience. As someone who's run several Kickstarters themselves for my convention, the first one, I had absolutely no flipping idea what I was doing. And I still couldn't run a product Kickstarter, but I'm pretty good at running, AcadeCon Kickstarters these days. And, I think if you know what you're doing, you can set reasonable dates and targets. And I think there's no reason other than unforeseen circumstances, which are by definition unforeseen and unexpected, that you'll probably hit those. So
I should bring up too that Jim's a big fan of Ravenloft, like I6, the original Ravenloft. And he really in particular loved the isometric maps of like the castle and stuff. So that's what we have. We have a very Ravenloft reminiscent, this cool isometric maps of this tower, like going all the way up for every floor. Obviously, I mean, why wouldn't you do every floor? And Marco Bernardini is...
Well, there's one floor you don't do just because why?
The 13th floor.
Yeah.
So Marco Bernardini is the guy drawing those maps, and they're also very beautiful. They've been previewed on the Kickstarter page if you want to take a look at them too. And he also got Edwin Huang and Misty Coates, who are his artists and colorists, back on board to do this comic. So it's like the original team that did the Skullkicker comics in the first place. So it's cool getting the band back together. Thank you.
Nice. All right. Well, again, I really appreciate you sharing that with me. And in all honesty, I will go check it out. I'm not sure I'll back it, but for $10, I probably will.
I'm very excited about it. I just think it's a really cool book. And like I say, it's already funded. So, we know it's coming. Mm-hmm. And I'm just really excited about putting it together and working with Eleanor and Clint and making up cool stuff for it. And I think it's all three of us, I think, have come up with some good ideas together. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So I recommend checking it out.
All right. Very, very cool. So one last time, I'll pause just a couple seconds to see if anybody in chat has any questions for you. While we're waiting on that, Chris, do you have any questions?
I'm kind of getting a feeling the comics were a little more lighthearted. So is the adventure a little more lighthearted?
Yeah. There's definitely Jim put together a whole document of like what Skullkickers humor is, like what is appropriate for Skullkickers and what isn't. And there is a definite sense of, it is a funny comic. And there's a definite like point of view and comic sensibility about it. And I'm taking that into account all the time when we're writing, like what fits and what doesn't fit. What can we, get away with? And, what can I see happening as Skullkickers comic and what wouldn't? But it's not like it's not goofy. It's not like wacky slapstick. But one big thing that comes up in the comic a lot is that when lots of people get together and form a group, they are dumb. They make bad decisions as a group. So there's all this bureaucracy in this Wizards Academy that's housed in this tower, and so that itself can be a thing we can exploit in the adventure for it can be a confusing morass of things to get through for the characters while they're trying to do something else. They could be students of the academy. They could just be there to steal things. Either way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny. It's funny, but I think it has a really cool sensibility.
Nice. Is this for all ages, more adult themed?
It is. There is profanity in the comic that is garbled out.
Okay.
Okay.
So, and
It's
there's
kinda
not, and it's
kind of like Star Wars, where they make up their own stuff.
yeah. So profanity is garbled out in the comic, and it is pretty bloody and gory, I gotta say. But it is also like comic book bloody gory. Like it's not
Right.
graphic, but there's plenty of that going on.
It's
Yeah,
comic book, not Hellraiser.
I would say a teenage audience.
Okay.
Around like 14 and up, I think is probably a good starting point. Maybe 13, 14. Jim may think something different, but I can see it. There's also he's in. I think they're doing an animated series. I know because he showed us the script for the pilot of that, and I don't know if that's landed somewhere. But I'll say the animated series does not garble out the profanity. So animated series not for kids.
Yes, gotcha.
Comic book, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
PG-13.
Little kids, we want them to read. Adults, we just want them to veg out on the couch. That's the natural evolution of the human psyche. Awesome. All right. Well, with that, we will go ahead and move on into everyone's favorite part of the show. And by everyone, I mean no one except for New York Tater. And that is, where have my fingers been? So this is the improv game where we're once again going to prompt one another. We're going to come up with a scenario that you will then role play out using your fingers as puppets. Usually it involves 2 puppets, but if you want to be Scott, you can bring in a third and try to add an extra flavor. I don't suggest it, but you do you. And basically the scenarios can be almost anything, but it's usually like waiting in line or seeing something along those lines. Have you said you watched an episode, so you at least seen one instance of this?
Yes.
Correct. Okay. But the most important thing is the song. You have to do the song, or New York Tater will revolt. But again, Michael, you are the special guest co-host. Do you want to go first, second, or third in terms of actually doing the actions?
I gotta say, this New York Tater sounds like he really has you in his grip.
He does. But he's also...
Blink if you need help. Blink twice if you need help. If you need me to call someone. Oh, sorry. I'll text someone.
Yes, very good. But yeah, would you like to go first, second, or third?
No, this time I definitely want to go second or third.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll let you... Do you want to prompt first, or you want to be...
No. I would like to not be involved at all in the first one, because I still need to get a handle on it.
Perfect.
I did see it once before, but...
All right. I will prompt Chris. Chris will prompt you, and then you can prompt me.
All right.
Okay. So, Chris, first of all, sing the song.
Where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been?
Your fingers are in a Cub Scout first aid tent dealing with was it Gary D&D injury?
Oh my god! I look! What is it? We were playing, the D&D where we make things up, but we don't actually roll dice. And look, I don't really see any injury. You were probably just sitting in your chair. What happened? Well, my character killed the dragon, and I jumped up, and I was really excited, and then I don't know. I'm here now. Look, my finger. You don't have fingers. We are fingers. And that's where my fingers are.
Real meta. Wow.
Mind blown.
I hope the Cub Scout knew he was a finger. I felt like most of it he wasn't aware of the reality of his situation.
There's no rule saying it has to make sense.
Because if there was, we would stop doing it a long time ago.
Yeah, dark turn.
Okay, all right. So, Chris, now you get to prompt Mike and give him a situation where his fingers have been. But, Mike, again, I'm sorry, you have to sing the song.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I thought I get the prompt before I sing.
No, you sing the song first.
Okay, it's where have my fingers been? I say, where have my fingers been?
Yep. Nope.
Close enough.
Good.
Tater.
They are at the library.
Oh, at the library. Right. Excuse me. Shh. Sorry. Excuse me. I'm looking for a book. Sure, we have books. What kind of book? It's I don't know the name of it. Okay, well, do you know the author? No. No, it's I can't. I forget the author. Okay, well, what's the subject matter? What's it about? I don't. I feel like I knew it right before. I don't know. It's yellow. It's a yellow book. So that I know it's a yellow book, and it's supposed to be really good. It's yellow. Well, all right, let's go to the yellow book section. It's a library that categorizes things by color. Turns out it was okay.
Yeah, I have pretty much had that discussion with my wife before.
Like that felt
She
to me like
can't
you were
remember.
channeling something that you've been through. That felt really real to me.
A friend of mine used to work at a bookstore in Vancouver, and that sort of thing would happen sometimes, where they didn't know anything about the book except for the color. And then he's like, "Well, can't help you."
Yeah.
Sorry.
Excellent. All right. So then, Mike, you will give me the prompt for my fingers.
All right.
Where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been?
Okay. Where have your fingers been?
That is a
That's
question.
a good question. I'm looking around this room here, so I'm going to say atop the Eiffel Tower.
Seriously, dude, you do that every effing time that we come up here. I cannot help it. I am just absorbed with the scenery. Okay, first of all, we're in Vegas, not actual Paris. This is the fake Eiffel Tower. I don't care. Plus, I think that thing didn't burn down like 20 years ago. Yes, we're ghosts! Ah! And that's where my fingers have been.
3 twists. Everyone had a big twist.
Thank you, Tad, for subscribing. We really appreciate that. Thank you so very much. All right.
Tad.
So, Tad, actually, sorry.
That's what it meant to say.
Tad, get on it.
My Kentucky accent got in the way. All right, so we're going to move into our next to last event, and this is our Cryptozoology, and this is where we talk about a monster or monsters, usually from D&D, but not always, and talk about maybe ways we've used them in the past or brainstorm some interesting ways that we could use them in the future. Mike, you are our bonus guest co-host, so what creature did you want to talk about tonight?
Animated objects.
This is awesome. I was very excited when you mentioned that. So we'll let you start. So this is a creature, I guess we'll define them as creatures you used before. What do you find interesting about using them?
Yeah, I used them in one of the adventures I wrote for San Diego Comic-Con. The scene takes place in a marketplace. There's like this busy marketplace, and there's people hawking wares and stuff. And at some point, the chairs and tables come alive and attack everyone. So there's like no getting away from it. Everyone's surrounded by it. That's what made me think of it. And then it's fun to narrate things like, you lunge at it with your rapier and you just destroy the wicker back of the chair, whatever. There's like all kinds of things you can throw in there. But the thing that really made me think of it was that when I ran D&D for my now 10-year-old, like probably 3 years ago, I quickly figured out that he was not going to fight anything that he thought would get hurt. Like if it actually would be hurt, like in pain, he didn't want to fight anything. And he made this halfling with a 16 strength and a battle axe and all this stuff. I thought he was like ready to go. Yeah. And he just didn't want to fight anything. He would fight undead and like oozes probably, as long as it didn't seem like a person.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, so only undead. Okay. So there was a bit that was kind of like Night at the Museum where some museum in town was having a problem and they were keeping it real hush hush. So they needed like an adventurer to go in there and just take care of the things that were moving around, so that a wizard could go in there and then like dispel magic on, do some ritual that would end it. But he couldn't get in. He couldn't do it because everything was moving around in there. So I was like, see, I can all just be like animated stuff. Like he won't hurt anything. It's all museum exhibits and taxidermy and stuff. So he walks in and the first thing that moves is this animated armor. I'm like, this is where I'm going to get him. Like, and he's going to realize like, oh no, this whole place is coming alive. Animated armor comes at him. It's his turn to say, what do you do? He goes, I want to use my axe to lift up the visor just to make sure there isn't a friend in there. That's very sweet.
Your kid gives me hope for humanity, let me tell you.
Yeah. Yes. And I thought it was so cool because it could have been a friend in there.
Yeah.
But also like, it really made me appreciate how much mileage you can get out of things. I normally like monsters that like organize and they have societies and personalities you can interact with and all this stuff. You can't really do that much with animated objects, but they're so versatile. You can use them in lots of situations. Like, I think one problem is always like, if it's like some ancient tomb that no one's been in for a long time, you can always have animated armor or animated something else in there. That always works. At least I always want to justify, like, why is something in here? What are they doing there? And those things don't need to eat or anything, so that's a pretty good one. And then I like in that adventure, that Comic-Con adventure, I always had fun playing the tables and chairs that attacked everyone. Also I ran Forge. Was it Forge of Fury? It was a 3.5 adventure that they redid for 5th in Tales from the Yawning Portal, and I ran it for a group. And there is an animated table in there in a dungeon, just like out of nowhere. There's just an animated table. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's very funny also to mime the table, like running like a horse and rearing up and pawing at adventures with its hooves or not hooves. So there's a lot of fun to be had with animated objects, I think.
All right. So what about you, Chris? Have you ever used these, or do you have any ideas for how you could?
I've only used them once, and it was in more of a kind of a spooky horror setting. But I used them more to build the atmosphere, as they could hear things crashing in the other room, and then they'd get there and there's nothing in there. And then eventually they figured out that it's animated objects moving around. And that's part of the storyline too, is they were actually people that had been polymorphed into the animated objects, but it was a bigger story. But I used it more as an atmosphere thing and to build the tension more than enemies they had to fight. And it was also fun to play around with moving the lighting in a room, so to speak. They really couldn't figure out why the shadows were moving. Is the way I would. That's
great. And as a trick to get them to go deeper or flee from the thing behind them, whatever, like that's real good, because just the noises ought to be enough to either interest them or make them want to run.
Yeah, and like I said, the torch would move a little bit, which would cause the shadows to change. So then they were chasing shadows, and it was neat. It was a good way of building the atmosphere. Have you ever used them, Michael?
A couple times back in my younger days when I was a really bad DM and I like to just screw my players over. One of my encounters that I really enjoyed was to have a suit of animated armor that they found, but of course they didn't know it was animated until one of them put it on.
Yep.
And I think that's classic. I'm not too original, but I still think that's kind of a fun encounter, because now you have the difficulty of how do you deal with this. You have to defeat the armor, but you basically got to beat the crap out of your friend at the same time. So to your kid's point, there could be a friend trapped in there that would like to get out, but it can't. So, what attacks do you use? It sort of almost comes like a metagame in a bit. You want to use bludgeoning if you can, just for the narrative that you're not like stabbing people and casting fireballs at them. But then also, can you negotiate with an animated object? Like, what is its purpose? You could potentially give the armor a bit of a personality, and if you could convince it that, it's been in this dungeon for 1,000 years, doesn't it want to go see the world? Then maybe it can actually become a very beneficial magical item. It gets the benefit of having magic armor, but it also, can do things for you. Like maybe you get a bonus to your armor class because the armor knows to duck even if you don't. It doesn't have to be you're screwed, but I think it's still an interesting situation to see how it plays out.
Or you can do a Full Metal Alchemist thing where you just have a suit of armor that walks around with you everywhere and is your buddy.
Yeah, you don't have to be wearing it. Eventually it just walks away with you. New York Tater mentioned animated armor that makes you walk funny, like a Monty Python bit. That could always be good.
That's good.
I do really like that you talked about the taxidermy, because that has something I hadn't really thought of before. But that could be a kind of a cool setup that maybe like early in the adventure, you mentioned there's this, crazy wizard or this, eccentric millionaire, whatever the term would be in D&D world, that has this really extensive museum of taxidermied animals. They've hunted all the beasts across the continent, whatever. And as they get closer to it, they start seeing lots of more animated objects that are somewhat benign, but there's just a bunch of them, not realizing that maybe something is just like a universal effect, a general effect of this whole area, that eventually when they get inside, all of these things have the potential of being animated. So, you've got potential dragon bone skeletons. They're not actual skeleton dragons, but they're animated objects of the skeletons. That could be like a really cool set piece for the final of even like a lower level. You almost get the fun of playing against these tough creatures, but they're not really those creatures. They don't have all their abilities. But I don't know, that'd be cool, especially if you do play with maps and minis. Put the big dragon mini on the table, but it's only got like 80 hit points instead of 500.
Well, and it's a way to, if you have like a real location-based campaign, like let's say you've built up all these connections or something in a city, and the game isn't really about like going out of the city, but doing stuff there. It's a way to bring the other stuff in, right? You you don't have to go find the dragon. You can bring, or the owl bear or whatever. It can all just be in this place. I was also thinking as you were talking, what would be really cool is if there were one animated object and that could spread its animatedness like a virus. Like if it touched a thing, then that thing becomes animated. Because then once you figure that out, it's like chasing after that one thing, that one chair or broom or whatever it is. While all these other things are coming to life as it like runs into stuff. And that seems like a pretty fun setup.
Yeah, I like that. Also, somewhat along those lines, but that's sort of like you're chasing like a ghost that possesses people. So you're fighting the chair and you destroy it, but now the broom comes alive. And when you destroy the broom, so you have to find a way to defeat the spell that created it. But, you can fight these all day because if you don't fight it, they're going to beat you senseless with the brooms. Right. But that's not really the goal. The goal is to stop the spell itself somehow or some effect.
Yeah, it's good.
You could use them, and this might be a little mean in a way, but use them as ways of spying on the party. So you could build a storyline up where every time the players come up with a story, the bad guy's always one step ahead of them until they spot the animated object spying on them. And then they have to outthink the bad guy. Be kind of a neat way of doing it, too.
I like the idea of animated objects with some intelligence. Like maybe they can't talk, but they have personalities and they can communicate in some rudimentary way with whoever is familiar with them. That's funny. Mm-hmm. Or like, a chair that pulls itself out from under you.
Almost like attunement, like if you just hang around with it long enough.
Yeah, that's cool. I like finding other uses for attunement. This is a tangent, but I like attuning to a place or something, or like to an animated object. Now you can communicate with it or something. It's a neat idea.
I like maybe the idea of a stool that has a complex because it's not really a chair.
Yeah.
So it always has this thing about how it's once you can sit on me just like a 4-legged chair. I don't know if I'm but there's like this weird complex going on. I don't know where I would go with that, but it just struck me as funny. All right, we'll throw out the chat if anybody has had any interesting encounters with animated objects, or we've had a couple suggestions already and a couple of comments, but if you have any ideas, please let us know. We're going to move into the last Q&A, but before we do that, we'd like to go around the horn and let people know where they can get a hold of us on social media. You can plug the project one more time if you want. Mike, so we'll start with you. If people want to find you online, where should they go?
I'm on Twitter at Devlin1, Devlin 1. It's my middle name and the number 1. And I'm on Twitter too much, especially these days. The Kickstarter again is Skullkickers, Caster Bastards, and the Great Grotesque.
Nice. Thank you, sir. And then Chris, where can people find you online?
Twitter's the easiest way, Burlew_Chris. And please stop sending me fake Mandalorian Season 2 trailers.
I got hit by that as well.
Funny. The first 10 were funny. But they did release the official one, so I enjoyed that. But I've seen about 10 fake ones now, I think. Being the big Star Wars guy, I get excited, and then you're like, it's another ad that somebody popped in the middle on me. Or
I got Rickrolled. That was the one that I got. Did you see that one? Where it's literally the Rick Astley song that plays like 5 seconds in?
No, the one I saw, it was about 30 seconds of build up with the intro and the spaceship, and then it jumps to a different songs. I got the one where it's just somebody laughing, going, "Ha ha, not yet." And I was like,
son of a bitch.
You've seen them all.
Yeah. So I've seen a few.
Excellent.
Where can they find you?
At the RPG Academy. Pretty much everything I do can be found there. The website, YouTube, Twitch, but Twitter's where I'm most active. I also doom scroll way too much. Yes. I do have my Smallville podcast, Farm to Fable, where we're rewatching the entire series because what else are you going to do in quarantine? And we just recorded our final episode, season 1, yesterday. I've already edited it and it's posted. So basically I'm done. Next 2 weeks, 2 more episodes will come out, and then we'll take like a 2-month break and then start building up episodes for season 2. But I'm having a lot of fun with it. So if you enjoy anything I do here at all, and or you kind of like the Smallville TV show, and or you were willing to try it, go check out Farm to Fable because I'm really proud of that show. And then AcadeCon, I'll plug that. We still have almost 2 weeks left in our virtual convention because of COVID. We can't have an IRL convention this year as well, so we're doing a virtual one. Our Kickstarter has already funded. It's at a little over 200%, but it's still going to be really small. So we have plenty of room for other people to jump in and play games. We're going to be hosting panels, running RPG sessions, and even some tabletop stuff. though that'll probably be through Tabletop Simulator, so it will require that people have that program. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. So $3 gets you a ticket, and you can pre-buy a badge for next year if you want. That's the only reason why we funded, which helps us out because we still have bills to pay this year, even though we didn't have the event. But we're covered now. But, money's still money. I can always put it in the bank and then use it next year. So with that, we'll throw it out to the audience for our final question and answer period. So this can be for any of the hosts. It can be for anything. It doesn't have to be gaming related, though that makes sense. But it can pretty much be anything. And there's a bit of a delay, so we'll just kind of pause here for station identification. So Mike, any other shows you've mentioned? I know you mentioned Lower Decks. Is there anything else that you will quick plug while we wait for people to maybe ask a question?
There were two things. Stargirl and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. were happening concurrently. The last season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the first season of Stargirl. And they were both so great.
Okay.
I really enjoyed Stargirl a lot. I would watch it just like, I'm not going to record this on the DVR. I'm going to see if I can be like a modern person and just watch it on the app, on the CW app, and see if I can do that every week, if I'll remember. And it was really good. I loved it so much, start to finish. They got Luke Wilson to be on that show, which is like crazy, but it's like a little corny, maybe more than a little corny, but it's good. It's they handle it well. I was really pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I haven't checked that out yet. I do plan on it at some point in time.
Yeah,
and that's also, don't they have Joel McHale is like the original?
Yeah, Joel McHale was Starman.
He dies like early in episode 1 or something.
Yeah,
and then I watched Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. like pretty religiously, I guess, for like the first 4 seasons. Then I kind of fell off of it, but I did hear the last season was actually a really good season. So I need to circle
really
back
good,
to it.
Because it had really, for me, I wasn't, I watched it because I'm a completist. Like I watched all 5 seasons of Heroes, and I liked one episode, and I watched all of it, and I was like hated it every time. But I was like, I just want to know the big story points where things go. So. So I always say that because like I can watch anything if I'm interested enough to see where it goes. So, I think a lot of us started watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because we're like, wow, cool, a TV show that ties into the MCU, and it kind of does, but not really.
Yeah.
So it kind of went in weird directions around season 6, 4 through 6. But in season 7, they do an Endgame. They do an Avengers Endgame where they find an excuse to go back through previous stuff and like revisit it. And it was really entertaining. They did a great job with it.
Interesting.
Very cool. I definitely want to have to circle back to that one then. I don't have HBO Max. I do everything on Roku, so I can't even get the app at the moment, which is really frustrating. But I'm really interested in checking out some of the shows that are on there now, like Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
I think they put like the first episode on YouTube a while back, and I watched it. And I was like, this is really cool, but I can't watch any of the rest of it. The new Harley Quinn animated that was on DC Universe is now there. I've heard that's amazing. So, and then even Lovecraft Country, I want to watch that. So there's so many things on HBO right now that I can't watch. And so I got a backlog. Eventually I'm going to get to them.
Did you watch Watchmen?
I loved Watchmen. It was maybe the best thing I watched on TV in years. It was phenomenal.
It also had a really good podcast that went with it.
I think I listened to that.
That was...
it was the official one, right? By the actual creators?
Yeah, it was Damon Lindelof and Chris Mazin. Is that the right name? Craig Mazin? Yeah.
That sounds right.
The guy who did Chernobyl was interviewing Damon Lindelof about Watchmen. And it was interesting every time. So if you like Watchmen, I say check that out.
I did listen to that. I'm a big podcast guy in general. And actually, David Lindelof is a good get for an interview. He's been on several like guest star episodes on stuff. He does, there's a Lost rewatch podcast. And he's been on there several times talking about Lost. And he also, I'm going to screw this up. I think he was on like a panel with the guy who does The Walking Dead, whose name is escaping me right now. Kurt.
I'm not going to help much.
Yeah. Kirkman,
Robert Kirkman.
I feel bad. I couldn't pull that.
Who is literally the twin of one of my best friends. Like if you saw them together, you would think they're the same person, which is weird. And they both live close to each other or did. I think Kirkman used to live in Richmond, Kentucky. That was like a big secret, but or like I know where this is. But anyway, but they did this thing where I can't even explain it. I don't want to ruin it. But basically, those two on a panel together, and I don't know if I listened to it on. It was a podcast that was replaying this panel, it was like the funniest thing I've ever heard was these two people just riffing, because Kirkman's really funny anyways.
Yeah.
And Lindelof's, God, he's just amazing writer. He's got a lot of knowledge and tells great stories. So I know I'm doing a terrible job selling this. I'll see if I can find it and I'll put it in the show notes. But there's a podcast somewhere of those two together on a panel that is well worth your time to listen to, because it's amazing. But no questions have come in. So Chris, I'll just ask you one if you have anything else. Otherwise, we'll sign off and jump off and go hang out with families or something.
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, then we'll call it there. Mike, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate you sharing the Kickstarter
Thanks
with
for
us.
having me.
I'm going to go check it out. And again, it'll be links to it in the show notes to make it easy for
Great.
other people.
Thanks.
And we'll see you back in 2 weeks for the next Detention. So,
What?
oh, yeah.
Wait, what
Not
happened?
necessarily you, but you, the audience.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, this is
What
a
did I sign up
contract.
for?
You're here
Yeah.
forever now. Awesome. All right. Everybody give the awkward wave out as I hit the button to say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.